Sports, 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 sports.
Hey there, sports fans. Welcome to Sportsball, part of the SPDM Crew podcast. We talk about sports-related topics, but we focus on you, the fan, and what you like, whether it's a sport, team, event, sports-related news, or athlete. This week, we are talking about Formula One because the start of the season is coming up this weekend. And there's no better person to talk about Formula One with than our resident guru, our resident expert in all things Formula One. So say hello again to Adam Ritchie. Hello. How's it going? Good morning. Good night. How's it going?
It's going really well. Pretty excited for the season to begin, and thanks for the intro. I'd like to consider myself a guru, but I am proven wrong quite often with Formula One. As predictable as it can seem to be, it's very unpredictable, especially in these last couple of years, and this year in particular is going to be very unpredictable.
Well,
predicting a very probably one of the greatest seasons in history, probably this year, to be honest, with the way the teams are winding up.
Nice.
Pardon me.
Well, so before we get into the 2025 season, we wrapped up and talked about season end of 2024. Has anything happened between the end of 2024 and where we are today on pretty much the eve of the Formula One season started? So anything of note during the off season that happened that is worth mentioning to you?
It's actually been one of the most boring off seasons of memory, to be honest, of the last few seasons. I'm not sure where we were when we last signed off. There's a couple of driver signings that hadn't happened. So Isaac Hadjar had signed for Red Bull, the junior team for they're called RB Racing Bulls. One of the big things that is probably on the front of everyone's mind is that Jack Doohan, who we spoke about, an Australian boy, just actually literally grew up across the road from where I live now. He signed for Alpine, and during the off season, his team have actually signed an Argentinian driver, Franco Colapinto, who raced for Williams last year and was pretty impressive. He was quite quick against his more experienced teammate. He is from Argentina. He's a handsome fella. He's got a massive backing from his country. There's a lot of fervor around him just from a fandom point of view, where Jack Doohan doesn't really have that. Jack is really unknown, to be honest, for casual Formula One fans, and being that he doesn't have a lot of money behind him coming from Australia, there's already rumours out there that Jack's days are numbered and the season hasn't even started. So there's rumours about clauses in his contract that he could be kicked out within 5 to 6 races. Even I've heard rumours about he might be kicked out after the first race in Australia this weekend. So it is all obviously as an Australian, that kind of worries me a bit, but I think it's kind of inevitable that Colapinto will replace Doohan at some point this season, because most contracts do have get out clauses for the team and the driver, where if I guess for the team's perspective, that if a driver doesn't have a certain level of performance compared to his teammate, they can basically kick him out and get someone else in. And I think with Doohan going up against Gasly, I have all the faith in the world that Doohan is good. I think he was really impressive in Formula 2. I don't think he's going to have the legs at all on Gasly. He's got a lot to learn, and first year in Formula One is a really tough. It is a big learning curve because these cars are very different to all the junior formula. As much testing and simulator work as Jack has done, I don't hold much.
It's not going to replace practical race experience.
No, absolutely not. I do think Jack has the speed. I don't know that he'll have the overall speed of Gasly initially. If he does, fantastic. Then really the team have the only way they would kick Jack out is because Colapinto is going to bring more money and more interest to the team, more sponsors. That's what will get Colapinto in over Doohan, rather than speed, rather than talent, to be honest. Although Franco showed a lot of talent, he also showed a lot of impetuousness. He crashed a lot, did a lot of damage to the car. But if he can bring the money in behind him with his corporate sponsorship, then Alpine have got that expenditure covered with the sponsorship, where Jack won't really have that. He's just there. Jack is there on pure merit, which is a big thing, to be honest.
That's always the funny thing about sports, right? Is that you'd think that merit counted for a lot more than it does, but it doesn't always. And that's that's
No,
also that's also a casual reminder that sports is still a business. And all those people who are like, it's just a game, it's just a game. Like,
absolutely
no,
not.
no,
No, it's
you're
not. It's a sport while they're racing on a Sunday, on a race weekend, but every other minute of time, it is a business. The good thing about the budget cap in Formula One is that it has tightened up that where teams used to have to get drivers based on the money they could bring to a team. That's a lot less of a factor now. So a lot more drivers are getting in on merit, which is great. It strengthens the pool of the 20 drivers that are there. There are obviously exceptions to that rule. There's a few drivers there that are there maybe because of connections that they have, either to family members who own a team or or honestly just have a lot of corporate backing that can sponsor a team that doesn't eat into their own personal budget. So yeah, I mean it's inevitable, but the merit thing is starting to outweigh it lately, which is great to see.
So, with the start of the season happening, can you walk us through what exactly
Mm,
happens at the beginning of the seasons as we ramp things up? So, you
mm,
know, during an off season, we don't, if nothing really happens with, driver movement or rookies signed,
mm.
which we'll talk about rookies coming up soon, but kind of talk about what some of these teams are doing to ramp up for the season in terms of testing, in terms of
Mm.
anything that's going on, and anything of note that you
Yeah.
saw you're seeing at the beginning stages of the season that you're excited about.
Well, I guess the big thing is that this is the 75th year of Formula
Mm,
One, of the World Championship. And they had a big event in London, at the O2 Arena to begin the year. Had all the car livery reveals and just a bit of a. I didn't even watch it because I just thought it was going to be quite boring. I saw little snippets of it online. It wasn't something I was tuning into because it's not a car reveal; it's a livery reveal. And to be honest, typically I was always excited for preseason to see the new cars because there was always completely new designs. But the last few years with these rules staying stagnant, the cars pretty much look the same. There's not a lot of difference in them. Like I was heavily invested in the different aero parts that they had, but they change so often throughout the year. Then it's easy to pick up on that now. Where once upon a time, the car you saw at the start of the year was pretty much the way the car looked for the entire year. That's
mm,
really different now. They will change stuff, depending on budget cap and capacity and capability at a whim, basically. Like there's every 5 or 6 races is kind of major upgrades on the cars. So I wasn't as excited to see that event as some. It was really a marketing event, and that's great. Look, 75 years of Formula One. Honestly feels like yesterday that I remember the 50th season beginning. It's
mm,
bizarre.
mm.
Honestly, like the 50th year was a massive year, and now it's 75. It's quite crazy to me, to be honest, that I've been following this sport well, intently following this sport for over 30 years. It's weird. So with the preseason testing, as I said, these are budget capped. This is a budget cap formula, but at the start of this year, they only had 3 days of testing in Bahrain. So that was 3 full days, so like a work hour day. So, but there was 8 hour sessions in each of those 3 days. And typically what happens is that the cars are only allowed to test one car for the entire 3 days. So what they do is swap out the drivers. So one driver will do a morning, the other driver will do the afternoon and the evening, and then they maybe swap them the next day and the next day again. So they get different conditions and different programs that they run through. Next year is going to be different. There's going to be more testing because this is the last year of this current formula. There is a whole new ball game next year with completely different cars, very new engines. They're losing some components of the engines, going to completely 100% sustainable fuel. And the cars are going to be smaller, different tires. And so, yeah, so next year there's going to be, about, I think, 6 days of testing and maybe a bit more. There is, not much more to add on to that. I can talk about the results of the testing if you like.
Sure. Yeah. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Which it's interesting that you mention that because kind of similar to you, I remember basketball or the NBA's 50th anniversary season, and
Mm.
then they just celebrated 75 years a couple years ago. So
Right.
I
Okay.
definitely empathize with you, knowing that
Mm.
I've followed a sport for that long, and
Yeah.
to see kind of the evolution because they basketball did a 50 greatest players and then they did a 75 greatest players, which is weird because
Oh,
all
right.
that stuff is super subjective because
Yeah, yeah,
the
absolutely.
for the 50th anniversary one there was a couple people who were omitted from that. It was like, really, we're omitting these people in favor of
Yeah.
this guy who's been in the league for like 15 minutes? Okay, cool,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
But the you would think, and this is just an outsider's perspective looking in, that for 75th anniversary year that they wouldn't you think that some of those rule changes would have come in during this season as opposed to next year?
No, no, that's not a big. I don't think that is a big factor with them.
Mhm.
The fact that this current formula that they race on was actually put back a year because of COVID. It was supposed to come in 2021, but it was put back to 2022. And basically, when this current formula came in, there was quite a lot of problems with the cars, and so I think they shortened the length of it. They wanted to just keep evolving, and there's problems with not problems with the engine, but stuff with the engine that isn't really road relevant, or it's too complicated and too costly. So I think they've removed a major component of the current engine, which is basically the MGUK, which is I think it's the K or the H. I think it's the K, which is it's basically a battery,
Mm.
more battery power, electric power, which is it stores the kinetic energy of the car. So they're removing that because that was quite a heavy, costly component of the car, and they're just going to keep the MGU-H. I could be mixing those up, to be honest. They might, yeah. Anyway, so that's kind of the reason why they have abandoned this current formula, and also because of the sustainable fuel. They had to give the teams time to develop the new engines, especially for a new fuel, and also give them they don't not give them time to develop the new cars because they actually restrict that. They're not actually allowed to start working on them on new designs until a certain time point of this year, which is I might get into a bit later why this year's going to be quite an interesting year. There's a lot of balance that these teams have to weigh up in what they develop and when they start developing.
I'll let you pick which one do you want to talk about. Do you want to talk about some of the rookies or do you want to talk about kind of some of the things that are going to make this season super exciting?
We could probably cover both at the same time because I think the rookies are going to make this season really exciting. Just opening up my wee little spreadsheet.
We little spreadsheet.
Wee spreadsheet. I've sent you this, haven't I? So you have
Yes,
seen it.
yeah,
Is that right? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I have seen it, and it's not small by any means. It's quite
Mm.
extensive. You and
It's pretty
Shane,
extensive.
you and Shane with your spreadsheets, because Shane's movie spreadsheet is massive, and your Formula One
Mm.
spreadsheet it's very detailed, and that's
It is
something that I
quite
always
detailed.
appreciate about you.
Well, I've been working on this spreadsheet, and like the cars, it's evolved, and I've been working on this for this is my 19th year working on this spreadsheet, so it has grown, and I love going back to the way it looked when I first designed it, and it's very sloppy, and now it is quite,
Quite
I think
precise.
it's sophisticated. I think it's sophisticated, yeah.
Very, very nice.
So anyway, onto the rookies. So the interesting rookies, I'll go down the list of championship order. So we have Kimi Antonelli racing. He's replacing, as I spoke in the wrap up last year, he's replacing Lewis Hamilton at Mercedes, which is a massive step for. He's 18. He's only turned 18 in September. So his teammates against Russell. George Russell, that is. Now, George Russell actually beat Lewis Hamilton last year, not convincingly, but he beat him. And Hamilton is a seven-time world champion. So the interest here from Antonelli, who's got a lot of props on him, like they're kind of claiming him to be the new Verstappen, who was a bit of a wonder kid when he came in. So Antonelli has big expectations on his shoulder. So him going up against Russell, who's now in his third, sixth, maybe seventh season of Formula One, and a very accomplished, very quick driver. And that's going to be a really interesting battle to see. Touched on before, Doohan versus Gasly. I think Gasly will have Doohan's number. I'd love to see Doohan surprise everyone, but that's going to be an interesting one to see how long Doohan lasts. That's where the interest comes from me there. That how long will Doohan last in this team, because it's not going to be all year. regardless
You
of how good he does, I think.
you think it's just inevitable at this
It's
point?
yeah, it's absolutely inevitable because Alpine they're not going to be in a race winning car. Doohan might be able to fluke a podium if there's some dodgy weather or something like that. But it's they're not going to be strong contenders. So which means he's going to be forgotten about. The team are easily going to just replace him. He's not going to be up scoring points higher than Gasly. Gasly is very, very, very good. So yeah, that's interesting from that perspective. The next rookie down the list is Ollie Behrman, who did a few races last year filling in. He was really impressive in Formula One. Not so impressive in Formula 2, oddly enough, and his season was not a great one. He's going up against Esteban Ocon, who is, so Haas have two completely new drivers. I actually think Behrman will beat Ocon. I think Ocon is really, really good, and he is a race winner. But I think Behrman's really good. I think he's going to. I think he'll have Ocon's number, or they'll be very even anyway. They'll be very level. It'll be a very level playing field between those two drivers. I know you don't have a clue who or what I'm talking about here, but hopefully some listeners do. Ask any questions along the way if you want as I'm going through these. Next on the list, we have Isaac Hadjar. He's a French driver coming up from Formula 2 as well. He's starting for the Racing Bulls team, which is the Red Bull Junior team. His teammate is Yuki Tsunoda, who has really stepped up his game as a driver. Yuki Tsunoda, this is maybe his fifth year now, or fourth or fifth year in Formula One, and he's been getting better and better each year. Arguable that he probably should be in the senior Red Bull team rather than Liam Lawson, but again, that's going to remain to be seen. Isaac Hadjar, I was really impressed with him through Formula 3 and Formula 2. I think he's a really impressive driver, so really interested to see how he goes against Tsunoda there, actually. I give him middle of the season, and I think he'll be probably on top of Tsunoda. As much as I rate Tsunoda, I think he's really fast driver, but he just doesn't have the consistency or the mentality to keep his consistency. He can be a bit fiery, Yuki. So I think Isaac will get his number by mid to late season for sure. And next down the list, we have Gabriel Bortoleto partnering Nico Hulkenberg at Sauber/Audi. Audi are taking over the team officially from next year when the new regulations begin. They'll be having their own engine as well. That'll be an interesting combination. Hulkenberg is a veteran of the sport. He's very, very quick, very accomplished, a really nice guy. Bortoleto won the Formula 2 championship last year. Some might say it was a lucky win because he
Wins a win.
Won one race.
He might
have. Yeah, well, that's right. He was consistent. That's what won him the championship last year, where a lot of drivers were probably quicker and better than him, but he was consistent throughout, and that's why he got more points and won the championship. Big raps on him as well. Actually, he's actually managed by Fernando Alonso, who's also driving this year. So I think that's the first time in history that an existing driver is also managing another existing driver. I don't think that has ever happened in the sport of Formula One before. That's in itself is fascinating to see if they ever come across each other on track. How that will work
what do you
out,
what do you do in a situation like that? It's like, do I take the win, or do I let the person that I'm backing? Do I let them go?
Not to temper expectations. Neither of these drivers are going to win a race this year. Aston Martin aren't in a place to win a race, and Sauber certainly aren't. They are well behind the ball. They are the slowest team in the competition at the moment, and will probably remain that way this year. Not much is going to change for them. Sadly, it's going to be interesting to see how they go once Audi comes on board and what those engines are like, to be perfectly honest. It's going to be a really interesting couple. Well, 2 or 3 years for that squad. So that's all the rookies covered. And you didn't want me to cover off what else might be interesting this year. From a teammate perspective, I think Norris and Piastri is going to be super interesting. Throughout the preseason testing, it seems that McLaren are the best car out there, and Ferrari are very close to them. So the preseason talk is that this is Norris's year to win the World Championship. However, there's also a lot of talk that Piastri, this is his third year, and was already very close to Norris, that Piastri could actually take the trophies from Norris a bit here. So the first half of the year between those two is going to be really fiery. As much as I love Piastri and rate him, and he is a future world champion. He's one of the he could be a future legend of the sport if he's got the right car at the right time. But I still think in only his third year, he still has some weaknesses where Norris has been in the sport now for this might be his sixth season, maybe even his seventh. He's very experienced, and he just has to have maybe half or a tenth extra speed on Piastri in qualifying, and he has his tire management under control a bit better than Piastri as well. So what will get Piastri across the line is Piastri has a better mind management than Norris. I don't think Norris has the mind management to win a championship. I really don't. I'd be interested to see if he proves me wrong. And if there's any Norris fans listening to this, they probably turned it off by now. But I do think I think McLaren have the best car, and I'll get to broader predictions a bit later on. I'll just go through the drivers from now. Leclerc and Hamilton. Hamilton's driving for Ferrari to wrap up his Formula One career. He's probably got 2 years left in him. That's how long his contract is. And now he's going up against Charles Leclerc. That's going to be a fascinating battle because Hamilton is one of the all-time greats. No arguments about it. The guy's a 7-time world champion. He's won 105 races, over 100 poles, blah, blah, blah. He's one of the best there has ever been, if not the best there has ever been. And Leclerc has all the potential in the world. Again, one of the quickest drivers out there, Leclerc. He's got youth on his side. I think Leclerc will beat Hamilton pretty comfortably, honestly. I really do. I just think he's got that youth on his side, like I mentioned, and that's what will get him across the line. Hamilton will actually teach him. Hamilton will make Leclerc a better driver from how to approach maybe a race weekend, how to extract the most out of a car. Hamilton will have his number at certain points in the season, but over the entire course of the season, Leclerc will have him under wraps for sure. Max Verstappen is joined by a New Zealander, Liam Lawson. Verstappen will kick the shit out of him because basically Lawson is talented and he's very quick, but it's Verstappen's team. And effectively, Lawson is there to be a number two and to score more points than Perez did last year and try and win Red Bull the Constructors. Make no mistakes, if Lawson is beating Verstappen at any point, he'll be made to move over and give Verstappen the position 100%. Antonelli and Russell, Russell should beat Antonelli. Absolutely should beat him throughout the course of a season. Antonelli will absolutely have his number on some weekends. I think he has got so much talent. I just think he has to look. He's 18. He needs to again get his mind management in line. I think racecraft will win Russell out there. To be honest, over the course of a season. Aston Martin, we've got Alonso versus Stroll. Alonso, it's no question, Alonso will beat Stroll. If it's the other way around, it'd be a miracle. Stroll's just not good enough. Alonso's 44 years old and still smashing Stroll. I mean, everyone knows Stroll is there because his dad owns the team. If he was in any other team, he would have been sacked 3 years ago. He's not good enough. And he's shown signs of being good enough, but those days are few and far between, which is not what Formula One teams need.
Well,
I've mentioned Gasly and Doohan. Gasly will beat Doohan and / Colapinto when he's brought in. Behrman and Ocon I've spoken about. Hedger and Tsunoda also. The next really interesting one is Alex Albon and Carlos Sainz in the Williams. So Carlos was kicked out of Ferrari last year by Hamilton. And he ended up at Williams. Williams seemed to be a team on the rise, and they were pretty impressive in testing, to be honest. They seem to be at the front of the midfield, so they could be the 5th or 6th quickest team here. And Albon and Sainz, I rate Sainz quite highly. I think he's one of the better drivers out there. It's easily in the top 5 drivers in the competition. Albon could be. I really think over the course of this season, that's a toss of the coin. It's a new car that Sainz is getting used to. Albon's been in this team for quite a while now. It's an interesting battle, absolutely. And they'll be picking up the tail end of the points, from 7th through to 10th, most occasions at best. So it's going to be really interesting to see who gets a leg up on those. Hulkenberg will beat Bortoletto just purely on an experience basis. I think whether it's points or not, but over the course of the season, Hulkenberg has his number. That's it for driver thoughts, driver opinions. What else do you want to talk about?
Let's talk about the schedule really quick. So any major changes with the schedule, and kind of can you give us the lay of the land of like the first leg of the season, some of the big or just the races coming up?
Yeah, well, the first leg of this, there is major changes because typically of late the season has been starting in the Middle East in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, but Ramadan is in March this year, so they push those back to allow races to occur there when they're supposed to occur. So the season begins in Australia again, and hasn't happened in quite a few years now. That Australia hasn't hosted the first race of the year because they used to every year. And so the first leg of the season, it's all great for me because it's all in my time zone. So we have Australia this weekend, China next weekend or the weekend after, and then Japan and Bahrain after that on April 13th. So they're the first four races. Australia, China, Japan. There's a great keeping it in that Asian part of the globe. That obviously helps with travel for these teams and so forth. But then we go Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and then straight to Miami after that. So all very different circuits too. So that's by the time the Miami race is finished, we should really have a good pecking order and who are the best teams, because we've probably experienced every type of circuit that we have, to be honest. Low downforce, high downforce, stiff suspension, soft suspension. As long as we keep the weather pretty consistent, then it's going to be, by the time Miami is over and done, we should know where the cars line up. And from there is when the season will get interesting. Then they head back to Europe after there.
Got it. So I guess now is a good time to start some of your predictions. So predictions so we could do this a couple of different ways. If you have any race specific predictions, we can do that. Or like, let's say we can either go the entire season, or if you want to go to the mid-season break as well, whichever you want to do. So if you want to give a prediction on who you think is going to be top of the point standing, if you want to talk about, race by race, however you want to talk about it.
Yeah, I don't think I want to predict race by race. That would be crazy.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that it would be possible at all. I'm happy to look at this weekend, Australia. I do think the McLarens will be on top in Australia. If all things, well, the weather this weekend is supposed to be sunny, and then rain during the race. So that's going to throw the cat amongst the pigeons. Yeah, rain always does, which kind of sucks because it could put the McLarens at risk, especially Piastri. So I think Piastri doesn't have the rain experience that Norris does. So I don't have any doubt that McLaren will be the fastest team in Australia, but whether they win the race, I really think it's going to be that close. I would love to. It would be amazing to win in Australia. I don't think an Australian has ever won an Australian Grand Prix. They haven't even been on the podium officially. I know in 2014, Daniel Ricciardo finished on the podium in Australia. I was at that race. He was finished second, but then he got disqualified because there was a breach. There was something wrong with the fuel flow meter on the car. And so he actually got disqualified, which sucked a bit. So officially in Australia, hasn't been on the podium at an Australian race, I don't think ever.
Ever?
Yeah.
Okay.
Piastri could be the first to do it, fingers crossed. Even when Mark Webber was in the pack leading Red Bull, he never managed to get on the podium. He just never happened, which was sad. A lot for luck reasons and maybe some skill reasons as well.
Yeah, just the race doesn't break your way. It happens. I'm assuming, and
yeah, that's the thing. As predictable as Formula One can seem on the outside, it's really unpredictable because so many things can happen. It's a really tough. I don't like to gamble on Formula One. I just think it's impossible. And this year, especially, speaking of predictions, I do think this year is going to be one of the most epic seasons that we have had in a very long time. 2010 was an epic season. 2021 was obviously a really epic season, but that was only really between two drivers in 2021. 2010 was between four drivers could have won that world championship and are coming to the last race. I have not seen that in my 30 odd years of following this sport. It's really that congested. I think this year could rival that. I think between McLaren, Ferrari, Red Bull, Mercedes, they could all win races again. Williams have picked up the speed. Alpine seem to have picked up some speed a little bit as well. So they're going to be a midfield battle between them, those two teams, and Aston Martin. Then you've got the Racing Bulls, who honestly are really unpredictable. Haas, were on the improve last year. It's going to be a really tight race all the way to the line, I think. From a team's perspective, it's McLaren's to lose the Constructors' Championship. From a driver's perspective, look, Red Bull aren't there at the moment, and they admit that. But Red Bull run very deep with their talent pool, and they could develop that car to be a race winner by Europe, by Imola, so you're never going to discount them. As much as I think McLaren have the Constructors' Championship to lose, I don't think either of their drivers will win the Drivers' Championship. I think it's between Leclerc and Verstappen. Verstappen is just that good. He will win in a shit car, in an average car, or in a car that's third best. I mean, he did it last year. Leclerc will be bolstered by Hamilton as long as Hamilton doesn't take too many points off him. I think the problems that McLaren will have is that Norris and Piastri will both be racing a race-winning car. They'll be very close to each other, and it's going to cause some friction some point down the track. They will take points off each other. It'll be toe-to-toe between those for, if not the entire season, at least till the team goes, okay, we have to support this driver to win the championship at some point. That's the only way a McLaren driver will win it, I think, this year. That's going to be so interesting to listen to this episode in December once it's all over.
Well, I mean, even mid-season when because
the
last couple of years we've done a mid-season breakdown of what's the first half been like, and anything that you predicted or anything that you thought was going to happen this season that has materialized, hasn't materialized. So we got that to look forward to.
We do. And look, it scares me making predictions with Formula One because, I mean, you do it with all faith and confidence that this is the only way it can happen. But the nature of Formula One is that it just doesn't go the way you think it's going to go. And that's part of the reason why I love the sport so much. It's like watching a movie, expecting it to go one way and it goes another. It's just exciting. So, Formula One's very much like that for me as well. Sorry.
When it comes to like predictions, it doesn't even have to be about like who wins or anything like that. Just any type of predictions or anything that you're not expecting is not the word that I'm trying to say, because
maybe a wild card or something.
Yeah, like a wild card or just anything that you're looking forward to in particular this season, particularly these first couple of races that.
Well, I guess I'm looking forward to really figuring out who are the quickest guys out, who are the quickest cars out there. The quickest guys are the quickest guys. I'm really looking forward to see how much Piastri has developed from season 2 to season 3. I'm really looking forward to seeing how he battles with Norris and how the team handle that. I am also really looking forward to seeing what happens at Williams, because if I have any wild card this year, and because Williams have been bottom 3 team for quite a few seasons in a row, I think they could sneak up to 5th in the championship this year. I reckon Albon or Sainz are both more than capable of putting out a podium in a freaky circumstance type of race where there's a bit of a safety car midway through, or a rainy race or something like that. I think either of those drivers, if any team that is not expected to be on the podium is going to be on the podium, I think it's going to be Williams. And toss of the coin, like I mentioned before, which driver does that, because they're both very, very, very good drivers. So, other than that, it's probably a bit boring, to be honest, about where else you could go. I mean, I think Verstappen will still win races, sadly, even though they might have the third best car at the moment. I'm really looking forward to seeing, I mean, I've said this before, but Hamilton and Leclerc going up against each other. I think that's going to be fascinating. As much as I think Leclerc will beat him, I still believe Hamilton is more than capable of beating Leclerc, because he's got one of the greatest work ethics of any Formula One driver of all time since Michael Schumacher. Hamilton probably has the best work ethic since him. He has the natural talent and the work ethic. Some drivers have the natural talent without the work ethic so much. Some drivers have both. Some drivers have the ethic and not the talent. So it's just such an interesting year this year. What is going to make it interesting also is that with the new formula beginning in 2026, is that when do these teams stop developing this year's car
and just pivot to next year?
That's right, and have to pivot completely to next year. Most teams will have 2 concurrent programs running. So they'll have their base model car this year, and they'll bring slow improvements like minor stuff like wing updates and this and that for certain track specific reasons. I can't see any car going through a major update this year. Even if they start the year terribly and aren't where they probably should be, they will probably just put this year in the bag, turn up to every race, knowing it's a waste of time for them effectively, but they will put all their resources into next year and try and get the jump on starting 2026 off to a positive. And that can be sometimes what's good about the formula changing so drastically. But it can also lead to the fact that when a formula does change, one team gets the jump and everyone has to take the next 5 or 6 years catching up. That's what happened in 2014 with the new engine and car formula. It's Mercedes got the jump and they were basically on top for 6-7 years in a row. And then this formula started, Red Bull got the jump, and it's taken a few years for the teams to catch up. And it can be, so what I'm trying to say is that when a formula changes, one team will get the jump. It's inevitable that one team will get the jump and they will lead. They'll probably win 2 or 3 championships in a row at least and make the sport very boring. With the convergence of, there's the law of diminishing returns. If a car's on top, they can only develop the car and gain so much, where other cars can develop and gain much more of a margin on them because they're not there yet. But it does take years for that to happen. That's why we have such great seasons when you come to an end of an era in Formula. That's it's a fascinating. Sorry, it's just one more fascinating aspect to this sport that just keeps me intrigued, keeps me fully engaged in just seeing how it goes. Like that's why I'm invested so hard in it, because it can be anyone. Like Adrian Newey, who we've spoken about in this show before, talked about next year could really be an engine formula because the engines are changing so much. All these manufacturers are making completely brand new engines. If one of them gets a jump on the others, because there are limited spaces, there are rules written in that basically development of the engine is frozen effectively. So if, for example, Mercedes build the best engine, there are 4 teams that maybe 3 teams that race for Mercedes engines. The championship's going to be between those 3 teams all the time if they all build, equivalent cars around that engine. Whereas if, say, Honda build the best engine, they're only in one team, which is Aston Martin. So Aston Martin will just dominate the series for ages. It can definitely ruin the sport to a certain degree when they do that, but the sport is also agile with its rules. So if that does happen, they are likely to go to a vote and change the rules and maybe allow other teams to develop their engine, other manufacturers to develop their engines a bit more. Yeah, there's always ways around it to try and converge the performance of these cars. I've said a lot there.
You have, and there's nothing wrong with that. So it's all good. So I guess for you, what else is there to say about the start of this upcoming Formula One season, and what else are you, just as a fan, you're looking forward to, and anything else that you want to cover before we wrap up?
I think I've said everything. I'd only be repeating myself if I covered anything else I'm looking forward to. Once we probably finish this conversation, I'll probably think of a million things as I tend to do, but because I don't prepare to come into these conversations, I just kind of
go
talk off the cuff.
Yeah.
I don't have much more to add other than, I did just finish watching Drive to Survive, the latest season on Netflix. I'm not sure if you've checked that out, but I think you should check that out.
I have actually, upon your recommendation. Okay. I've actually quite enjoyed it.
Have you watched all of it, or just maybe a season or so?
I only just started it, so
okay.
So the first season I thought was fantastic, very very riveting first series of it. So I've very much enjoyed it, and the fact that it is just bringing more eyes to Formula One, I'm sure is just part of the allure of it. So very much looking forward to continuing that, because I don't watch a whole lot of quote unquote reality shows, but I guess you can consider it a reality show. It's more of like a sports.
Yeah, I guess
doc.
so.
It's more of
that way.
It's more of like a sports doc type of thing.
Yeah.
Kind of in the similar vein that Hard Knocks is for the NFL, but
Oh, okay. Netflix do a lot of those shows now because of the success of Drive to Survive. Like there's a golf one now, and I think there is an NFL one too, isn't there, on Netflix or something?
there's an NFL one, there's an NBA one. I think
Oh,
Netflix
right. Yeah.
Netflix has figured out that there is a ton of money right now in
Mm.
sports, and I think
Yeah.
all these other streaming services, they're following suit, trying to scoop up live sport contracts. Amazon's getting in the
Yes.
game. Apple,
Disney are now too. Disney launching ESPN. I don't know if they're doing it in America, but in Australia, we'll get ESPN coming at the end of the month. So live sports and whatnot.
they are in the US, they are looking to do like a standalone service, but I still don't
Right.
know when it's going to launch here. So
They've raised the arse out of their fees too, again, because of
I have a Disney Plus bundle with Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN Plus, and a major reason
Right.
why the price has gone up is because everything goes up, but
Yeah.
the price of ESPN Plus has doubled in like the last couple of years.
Wow.
And
Wow.
well, granted, it used to be $5 American, and now it's like 13. So
Okay. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, in Australia, when Disney came, it was $90 a year because I get the annual subscription. It was $90. I'm $90 a year. That's cheap as hell. Last year, which I think I renewed in February, it was 180, and I think I've changed it. And next year it's going to be 220 or something. So
what a world we live in, right?
Yeah. I mean, $180 for you is probably for us is probably what 130 for you or something. What's it? I don't know if you get annual subscriptions in.
I sometimes get annual subscriptions if there's like a good deal on it, but
Yeah.
I suppose the last question I can't ask you is that, are you at all looking forward to this Brad Pitt Formula One movie?
Yeah, I absolutely am. I'm actually going to get out of my comfort zone, and they've just opened up an IMAX cinema in my city. It's like quite a fair, like I live in a long city, like I don't know what most big cities are like, but it's like maybe a 30-40 minute drive to travel halfway down there. It's not a proper IMAX. It is a laser 4K, but it's just basically a bigger glorified bigger screen. It's not the big IMAX, but I will go to that to watch F1, even though it's on Apple, and I hate the fact that I have to go pay for a movie at the cinema for a service that I'm already paying, but it's F1. I'm absolutely going to go see this. I mean, Joe Kosinski's, it's not, I mean, Brad Pitt's probably my favorite living actor, but he's not my draw card. It's Joe Kosinski and the techno and what he's used, the methods he's used to make this film. I'm not sure if you've know much about how he's filmed it behind the scenes, but they basically used a GP2 car. They actually filmed at real races and did scenes at the actual Grand Prix events. So there's some spoilers in there when you see what happened behind the scenes, which sucks a little bit. But they did up a GP2 car, so it wasn't quite as fast as a Formula One car, and added some Formula One bits to it. Thanks to Mercedes, the Mercedes team, they put some parts on it and then put all these camera rigs on it. So it's going to be, I think the speed is going to be very realistic. The feeling of speed is going to be very realistic rather than most racing movies. The actual racing in them, the driving, it's really piss poor. That's the reason I didn't like Ferrari, the movie that came out with Adam Driver last year. The racing in it was so fucking bad. It was just atrocious. And Gran Turismo was really close to being really good racing. But most other driving or racing movies, they're just shocking. It's just so, I don't know, it's really unrealistic the way these guys race. It's just the cars don't race the way they show them racing in movies. Trying to verbalize that, it's really tough.
Nice.
Anyway.
So, all right. Well, why don't we wrap it there? And I look forward to continuing to talk Formula One with you throughout the course of the season. So, Adam, as always, thank you for sharing your thoughts and your insight. Where can the people find you? And do you have anything that you want to plug?
Well, firstly, thanks for letting me rant for so long there, because it was just really me talking quite a lot. So yeah, anything to plug? Yeah, I have my own podcast called Curbside Collections, which is about physical media, where we talk about I interview someone one fortnight, and talk about their collections and get into some good conversations there. And every other fortnight, me and my mate Shane Hoffman talk about upcoming releases from boutique labels and what we want to see come to 4K, and just have some fun and some rants along the way about the state of physical media and just really the state of the world, to be honest. Plus, I also co-host another podcast on the SPD network called Cinematic Wasteland, where we go through the history of cinema year by year. We go through some facts of what happened in cinema that particular year, and we also discuss a film that was released in that year as well. I think our latest episode was 1925. It's a lot of fun, and 1926 is obviously coming up next. We're getting close to talkies and close to the Oscars, when the Oscars began. But that's also you can catch me on I'm going to say Letterboxd at Curb Rider. I review everything I watch, and generally pretty prolific on there.
Cool. So appreciate all you do for the SPDM crew. So thank you very much, and looking forward to continuing the conversation.
Yeah, my pleasure.